Welcome to another episode of the Amid the Mess podcast, where we talk all about health, happiness and self-improvement amid the chaos that is life. Today I spoke with Simon Postletwaite, who is a coach, facilitator and trainer to busy professionals who want to improve their work-life balance and avoid burnout in the long run. Specifically, he provides the opportunity for people to step out of the operational and to think deeply about strategic priorities in their life so that they can both be more present at home with their families and perform better at work to make it sustainable in the long run. So, we talk all about different strategies for work-life balance, misconceptions, interesting stuff, how he got into this field. I think if you have a job, whether it's part-time, whether it's full-time, and if you're trying to juggle being there for your children, whatever their age is, then this is such a valuable episode. And I really hope you take something interesting away that you might start applying. A lot of the things he says are, like he says, easier said than done, because in our present day we have so much stuff pulling us into different directions, like the phone constantly beeping at us with notifications. So all of this is said with so much empathy in mind. But I will leave the rest up to you. I really hope you enjoy listening to Simon Postletwaite. What are a few misconceptions about what work-life balance looks like and how we get there?
I think from my experience working as a coach with busy professionals, lots of whom have young families, is that work-life balance is something that would be nice or something that would be to aspire to. And there isn't the awareness of how essential it is. And we often liken it to a car. It's a little bit like, well, we put oil and water in our cars to enable them to keep going. And that recognition that our work-life balance isn't a selfish element, isn't something that we think, gosh, that would be nice if I could spend more time with family and friends. But it's absolutely essential to give you that resolve and resilience to deal with the challenges of supporting your family and juggling work commitments, to maintain that perspective and resilience, which is really important.
I love that. I love that reframe because, yes, it's essential. It's not just a luxury that some people can have. I liken it a little bit because I'm a big fan of exercise, a little bit like that. Some people think getting exercise or movement is a nice to have. It's like, oh, well, that comes at the end of the to-do list, if it's possible, and then it kind of falls off. And it's not that important. It's a luxury, but actually it's so important, absolutely. Just like the work-life balance.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Stephen Covey in terms of the 7 habits of highly effective people and that mindset of sharpening the saw. Just as you said around exercise, it's very easy to think, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just plow through this to-do list. But by actually saying, no, I'm going to take that difficult decision, and it's not selfish. It's making sure that I'm still fit and firing by the end of this month, by the end of next month. And so I'm going to prioritize those things that give me my bounce, my charisma, my resolve.
Yes, so it's thinking in the long term rather than in the short term, because you could just burn the candle at both ends for weeks or months, but then be burnt out and be out of productivity for ages. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
And within my role as a coach, that's often when you get employed by an organization to come and help put people back together. When they have gone down that route of completing themselves, and there becomes performance issues, burnout, and it's that idea that, let's do this work beforehand before we get to that point.
Yes, prevention is so much better than the cure, definitely. So kind of a bit of an not an off-piste question, but a big view question. If someone was at the end of their life,
Mm-hmm.
if they hadn't had the right work-life balance, looking back at their whole life, career, family, what would they regret? What are the big important things that would be missing?
As ever, you regret the things you don't do. So it would be a lovely phrase my father-in-law's always said: no one says I wish I worked more on their deathbed. So it would be, I wish I had spent more time.
Yeah.
I wish I had taken that opportunity to spend time with loved ones, to go and visit, and not keep saying, well, no, I think we need to, put that off and put that off. And this idea that we're once we retire, that's when life will start.
Yes.
But I think if you don't get your work-life balance, it will be that sadness and regret that your children have now flown the nest, and we have a finite time. Our children are 16 and 18. So we've just had GCSEs and A-levels, which was quite the experience this summer. But it really does bring home that those years when you are going to the beach, carrying everything, that's a finite period of time, and making sure that you appreciate and you make the most of all those times, and you're not in your office at home, and you're not you are present as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And it always helps to hear that from people who have experience of being at the other end. And I think it's really important to listen to all of that. It is cliche. You always get older adults saying, oh, the time goes so quickly. Yeah. But they are so right. They are so right. Yeah. So let's just define, in your view, how you work with it. How do you define work-life balance?
There's a lovely expression that I think really illustrates it. It's the ability to be where your feet are. So when you're at home, you're at home. You're not in this, oh, hang on, sorry. A healthy work-life balance is when you're able to arrive home and be completely focused on what your role is, for yourself and for your family. That's easier said than done. I think the way we work nowadays has so many pitfalls that we've sort of walked into in terms of technology, in terms of we now have the ability to have work emails ping in when we're having a family dinner. And you only need one misconception from a work colleague, where you can then completely sort of check out of where you should be. And it's important to be pragmatic. If there are times of high pressure in work, that there may be occasions where you have to really focus on making sure that everything is okay in work. The danger is if this becomes the norm, and we're unable to switch off. In my start of my career, I was a teacher, and so that started in 1997, and we had pigeonholes, and that was the only way to communicate with you. And
pigeonholes, that should define that. So that's the old kind of wooden blocks, that kind of structure where people put like a letter in.
So if a phone call came in, if a message came in, it was put in there, and when it was convenient for you at some point that day, or if it'd been a long day the next day, you collected it when you were ready to go through and respond to everything in one go. We don't work that way nowadays. So we have smartwatches, smartphones. We have a way where we can constantly receive information. And it's very easy to fall into the habit of feeling that I can address any misconceptions. And it's a bit like an infinity pool, because it then generates another communication. So I think we need to be really mindful of what we can control ourselves.
Yes.
in terms of we can't change the way organizations communicate, but I think we have a voice around that. But how we choose to interact with communications outside of our working hours is where we have the most amount of control.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's such a good reminder of the olden days. Sorry, I don't want to make you feel old, but the pigeonholes. I remember those from the school I went to, and in a way, batching our emails
Mm,
is like creating a digital version of those pigeonholes,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
So, like, actually, I'm only going to go to the pigeonhole at this time in the day and this time in the day. But we can talk about strategies a little later. You just briefly mentioned on your past. I would love to hear the backstory. What got you interested in coaching people to have a better work-life balance?
So, as I mentioned, I started off as a PE teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Spent 25 years in school, so then became a middle leader, so head of a PE department. Thoroughly enjoyed working with the students, and I really then enjoyed developing pedagogy, so teaching practice within the colleagues, within the team. Naturally, that moved out of your subject, so then became a senior leader in charge of teaching and learning, and then took several promotions. So you then work at some deputy head level, and we can easily equate promotion for progression. But you then do notice that you're getting further and further away from the things that really inspired you. And so after 3 years as an associate deputy head, it was the time to either become a head teacher or to make the bold decision. And my wife was phenomenal in supporting me, that I then, 3 years ago, qualified did a coaching qualification. What I really enjoyed about the role was managing the new leaders, and being able to provide that opportunity for them to step out of the operational and to reflect on their strategic priorities, and to have these mini coaching conversations where you just ask a few key questions to help unlock an issue, and listen really carefully, and then repeat back to the person you're working with what they've said. Often it's the first time they're articulating it, so that really promotes that self-reflection. And
Yeah.
that's what I really enjoyed. And so I spent some time with people who were professional coaches, and took the bold step to set up my own business. So I now work as a coach with around 30 to 35 professionals. These are typically busy professionals who are either new leaders or have quite a lot of leadership responsibility, who are have been supported in their where they are in terms of returning to work from maternity or paternity leave, or going through a challenging time in work where a coach would be helpful. So I
Yes.
work across a variety of organisations, and I also do team coaching and leadership training. So I do clinics on difficult conversations, resilience in the workplace. But I thoroughly enjoy it. I've got, as I said, around 35 people, and we have a session sort of every 6 weeks, which is an opportunity for them to reflect on their mindset and their approaches, and really leave with absolute clarity of what they are going
Yeah.
to do to move forward. And
Yeah.
it's a real pleasure. It's a privilege to be in that position where you can work with people.
Fantastic. As you're speaking about this, I can see you smiling. You clearly love what you do.
Mm,
That's fantastic. And there's a real theme of leadership through there. So
mm,
it's really coaching people the how to do the leadership thing and survive and be happy
yeah,
and thrive.
yeah.
That's fantastic. You also mentioned something about people returning to work
Mm,
from, say, maternity or paternity leave.
yes.
Although I wish paternity leave was a bit longer, that would be great. That's a whole ongoing thing. But so that's a bit of a segue to parents
Yeah.
and the madness and chaos that is trying to do a full-time job, even a part-time job,
Mhm.
and being really present for your children, especially when they're really young. Although probably also when they're teenagers. I just haven't personally experienced that
Yeah.
aspect yet. I'm sure there's plenty of issues or not, challenges.
Yeah.
So what about the parent guilt that we all feel? Like some people call it, my mum friends will call it mum guilt, but I'm so aware that there's dad guilt as well.
Mm.
It's parent guilt, really. What about that concept? Can you say a bit about, what's your take on that?
It's interesting. That is a theme that has come up in coaching conversations, and it's something that can be really effectively addressed, because a lot of it is around perception and that perception of the situation from the individual, from the coachee. So one of the benefits of coaching support is to actually unpick and really let's unpick this situation. And I'll give you an example around that. When a colleague has talked about now I have a young baby. I am doing less site visits in their role. I'm working from home more often, and I know it's being picked up on. Well, it was really helpful for him to go, how do you know? And actually, at the end of that specific conversation, no one had actually said anything to him. No one had anything. It was his sort of projection, and
he internalized it.
Yeah, he felt.
Yes.
And was sort of looking for things that just weren't there. And one of the strategies he successfully employed was actually to reach out to some of the team he managed and just said, I'm conscious that I'm not coming into your workplace. I'm doing more Teams visits. That's a little bit to do with our new arrival. And that was really healthy for him, for people to say, oh, no, it's actually, it means I can be slightly more effective in my role. I hadn't even considered it. I just knew that it was more productive that you weren't traveling to us. But it does mean that I can share things on my screen a little bit more. And so that was helpful to support in that scenario, actually digging a little bit deeper, because you could tell that there was something he was beating himself up about. About thinking, well, this time last year, when I look back on my Google Calendar, I could see what all the things I'm doing, and now I'm not doing those things. But as a coach, you can say, and what's the impact of not doing those things? Where are you on your deliverables? And that's helped provide that clarity, but also recognizing life is different now.
Yes.
And sort of flipping it and just saying, okay, so the things you feel you should be doing, if you were doing them, what impact would that have? And by saying, well, it's the 45-minute travel from my office to this site, there about that, that's 90 minutes. So that would, now I would have to be working later in the evening. And as I've mentioned before, when people then sort of externalize it, there's then that realization that no, things are different, and I need to select more effective ways of working. And it's the things of sort of these additional effort and the perceived perception of this. I'm rocking up on site all the time, and people can see how busy I am. Well, isn't it more important that you're delivering everything you need to do and providing the support you are in a much more effective way? Because you now need to be mindful of yourself as a resource, and looking to prioritize where you can be more efficient.
Yes, that's an interesting word, efficiency, because in my own experience, I think parents get way more efficient because time is such a precious resource. I see it in myself, I see it in my husband. And so I think, I don't know if you ever have to do like a reframe for your clients that, okay, yes, you're spending less time at the office, but look at how efficient you're being. Yeah, like I go into like hyper focus mode. If I've got an hour that's baby free, I'm like zook.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's really nice strategies as well. There's sort of, we look at time management quadrants, where you can say, okay, so organize your to-do list. Is it urgent and important? Is it important but non-urgent? So again, it's another covey mechanism. But most importantly, if it's non-important and non-urgent, it doesn't get on the to-do list.
Yes.
So again, you're really focusing on your efficiency. That perhaps when we're in a full-time role and we're there from a set period of time, you can fall into these sort of busy tasks which you just don't have time to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so we've talked about a bit of one of your clients' guilt towards the job, say guilt towards, oh, I'm not doing as many hours or long travel as I used to. But what about the guilt towards your family? Because I'm sure there's that kind of guilt, like, you feel like you feel guilty when you're at home, you feel guilty when you're working. So what about the guilt towards not spending time with your children if you are at work?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge. And there are a number of benefits from having the coaching provision, that someone can have that space to articulate how they're feeling. I think if it was to a colleague or a line manager, that there could be the temptation to try and fix things. And with coaching, there's a real benefit of providing the opportunity to just articulate how you're feeling.
And just be validated, I guess.
Yes. And then have someone empathetically listen, and so then repeat back, paraphrasing, but recognizing the emotion, so that you can confirm that is what you're saying. And then the benefit of the coach being able to say, okay, so what options are available to you? I've worked with a colleague in education, a senior leader with a young family, and about how she's struggling with mum guilt around missing clubs and activities, and it's important to, obviously in any point in coaching, to make sure you recognize any of your biases. And not projecting advice on how to fix it, but you can make suggestions. So you can step out in the model and say, would it be helpful if we looked at some possible suggestions? Is there anything you can sort of ring fence or with your daughter that becomes sort of golden time? That is something that's going to be prioritized and can be planned. And that has a direct link with that agency, that anything you do need to think about or do doesn't encroach on that. So you've got some really clear boundaries on what you're going to do, and then moving towards building in on your calendar. So I'm thinking about one specific leader I worked with who then said, right, Wednesday evenings, he arranged with another colleague so he could leave early and always do this activity with his young children. So that was something that became calendared. And he'd actually, one of the things I really like about the coaching process was when he came to this idea of, I could leave every Wednesday and spend some time with my 4-year-old and my 7-year-old. One of the real accountability measures around coaching be, okay, so give yourself a mark out of 10 for how confident you are you're going to implement this next week. And that was a 4 out of 10. Okay, that's interesting. And then what would change it to a 9 out of 10? And it became emailing his line manager and saying, just to let you know, for my work-life balance, I'm going to put in place this plan, and just by that accountability of telling his line manager, who then got brilliant, any help you need around that, I think that's a really good idea, and I'm going to hold you accountable to doing that. And that's been a real privilege to see that shift, and his pushback against doing it was worrying he was going to miss an email or miss being available to support people.
Yes.
And again, through coaching, the question that challenged him was, tell me the list of things that's more important in work than you being with your children.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're balancing as a coach how much challenge you want to directly give someone. But we'd worked with each other for about 6 months, and there was high levels of trust, and he knew that you had the best intentions, and that was really healthy to work with someone who's under the cosh, to have to say to himself, there's nothing here in work that is more important than one night a week, me having some wonderful time with my children,
quality time,
and then leaning into it. And when I pushed him and he came up with, well, this person may look for the driver, may not be able to find this. Okay, so then what do? They might have to go to another colleague and find, okay, or you could help them out the next morning. That's something that's been really good. And also when you talk with the person who's brought you into the organisation, who wants to talk about return on investment, it's been really good to share feedback from the coachees around the agency and the perspective that they're getting from having support.
Okay, interesting. And I just want to go back to the really good thing that the coachee client said, actually went to his boss or superior and said, this is going to happen. And then actually that person was like, yeah, great. I'm going to support that. That's fantastic for your mental health, for whatever. And probably, I would hazard a guess, a lot of people have families. I mean, there are people out there who choose not to have children and who won't. But if, in general, even those people, probably their human side will understand. Like, it's really good to have quality time with your family. So actually, more often than not, if you talk to someone at work, they will go, yeah, of course. That's a really good idea. So not to be afraid of broaching that subject.
Yes.
From what you've just said.
Yeah. And to clarify, this was outside of set working hours. This is in an industry where people choose to stay later.
Okay.
And check that everything's okay, which becomes this vicious circle of what would happen if I couldn't fix a problem. So what the response from the line manager initially, when I'd heard about it, was, yeah, cool, that's how you can leave anytime you want to. But then when he realized there was more to it, it was more around a work-life balance and recognizing that he needed to put some really clear boundaries and accountability for himself to do it. That his role was to give permission's the wrong thing, but to give that real validation of support. You need to be doing this.
Great. And that's interesting about different industries, because I do think there are particular industries that are awful for work-life balance. I think I have some friends, for example, I have friends who are architects, and they tell me that in that particular industry, there's really no such thing. They make the longest hours and everyone is expected to stay overtime. And so are there a few other, that's my only experience with it. Are there any other industries that are particularly guilty to kind of crack the whip a little bit?
From my experience, it's more specific around the culture.
The culture, in particular, offices. Okay.
The culture as opposed to the industry. So I worked in a variety of different schools, and now I coach in educational trusts, but also lots of different businesses. But what is really interesting is the culture and the approach, which is, it's very easy to have things laminated and put on a wall, but that's not where your culture is. The culture is what's lived and breathed every day. I worked with a phenomenal head teacher, and she's always stayed with me, and I use it a lot when I'm working with people. With leaders, she would send an email on a Friday afternoon to all the staff, just saying, at 3:00, I expect to see a stampede for your cars. As this was the industry where people tend to stay late. And then I remember reading it and just thinking, goodness me, this is powerful. And then the second sentence was, and think do I need to take that work home with me? Or could I do it more efficiently next week if I had 2 days with my friends and family recharging my batteries? Now, that didn't cost her anything, but that culture that was set where you have the person who's at the top of the pyramid in terms of the hierarchy, telling people work more efficiently, invest in yourself, invest in your family, regenerate yourself, was really, really powerful. Powerful.
That's amazing.
Equally, I work with an organisation in construction, and one of the leaders, one of his new team, who he's been really impressed with, after 10 months, was signed off on stress, which is common, and it's great that the support's there. And around that conversation, again, I was struck by the culture where he said, I'm really disappointed with this. And my initial thoughts were, well, I hope, I hope she's, is that around them? I think it's important that they didn't keep going. And when he clarified it, he said, no, I'm disappointed that we got to this point, that everything was fine. Everything was fine. And he said, I need to have a conversation when this colleague is in the right place, so they can actually say, we never get to that position again. I need to have a situation where you can go, I'm a bit frazzled. I've got quite a lot on my plate. We have appointed you from a national field. And our culture here is that we lean on each other. If things are difficult, our doors are always open. And we don't get to the point where we're really struggling and we're driving home and thinking that was rough, or we're not looking forward to coming in when it's a Sunday night. And you come away from that and think, that's a cultural thing, that you see your role isn't just to welcome someone back, and who knows, we might be in that position in a few years' time, but actually to address it and just to say, look, we all have challenges, but it is our responsibility to speak out, to reach out, so that we can support each other and not be in a first aid situation.
Absolutely, yes. And I imagine as a leader, most leaders would want to support all their employees and team, unless they're really, I don't know, one of those leaders that's kind of a bit, how do you call it, sociopathic. But but no, to your story of the first story, the head teacher, although I wanted to say, although in my little recording booth it's very hot, I actually got chills listening to your story about, and someone who, the head teacher, is so openly promoting, go home, enjoy your weekend, don't think about work. That's exemplary, and I hope other leaders would listen to this and think, yes, that's something I'm going to do as well. It's really good. But I'm curious about, let's move on a little bit. What about perfectionism? How does that come into the work-life balance conversation?
I think, again, obviously I'm completely biased, but coaching is really effective in that when someone is of that mindset of being all things to all people, being able to then pick out the key things when you are listening, and then when you, so often in a coaching session, when you've been working with a coachee for a while, it can start with, so what's going on? And then they can talk through the last 6 weeks, and thinking about the people who perhaps have reflected that they have this element of perfectionism, when things have unraveled, or they've been thrown curveballs, and then the fallout of having this mindset of, oh my goodness, and then this deliverable wasn't met. Again, being able to repeat back is quite powerful, and offering that this element of switching perspectives. Quite a powerful tool is just that mindset that perfection is the enemy of good. The idea that if
Yes.
you are constantly going right, nothing can go wrong. Everything needs to be at this level. Well, the things that have gone wrong are outside their direct influence. So having this mindset of we don't fear mistakes. What we need to be fearful of is the absence of a corrective response to mistakes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so being kinder to yourself, to say, right, we're going to be strategic, we're going to be organized, but if the wheels do come off, we take the learnings from it. And we have that resilience where we then come back with a smile on your face and that ownership of what may have gone wrong. But that's a much more long lasting, resilient way to approach work rather than everything will be perfect.
Absolutely.
Because that sort of leads towards that frazzlement
Yes.
of really focusing in your attention and the dangers that causes in terms of perhaps not getting interactions with colleagues right or missing other things because you're so focused on a key deliverable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my personal opinion is that there is no such thing as perfect. You can just continue perfecting something, but it is never going to be perfect. So at some point, you need to say, okay, that's enough.
A friend of mine's a doctor, and I had a really interesting conversation with her. And she said one of the things she talks about when people are presenting, when they're exhausted and when they're getting migraines, and it turns out that they are flogging themselves. One of the things she said, which I found really helpful, is she challenges them to look at someone in their organization or in their industry who's sort of 10 years ahead of them in terms of experience with more responsibility, but is managing and balancing things well, and look at
Mm,
their approach.
yeah.
And she said that's been really helpful in unlocking that there is a slightly lower intensity on this idea of that's not able to maintain that sort of hypervigilance of I'm on top of everything all the time and I'm 100 miles an hour. And she said that's been really helpful unlocking if I'm not going to burn myself out or frazzle myself,
Yeah.
what's the behaviors of people who've been doing my role 10 years longer than me? And she said typically it's this more measured, more calm, more, oh, well, that didn't go to plan. But that ability to go,
Yeah.
okay, well, we know we can pick out what we need to make sure doesn't happen again, but there is a measured calmness to it. She
Yes.
said steering people towards looking around where they work, because unfortunately there will be examples of people who aren't there or perhaps have had to hand responsibility back or change something about their role because of this approach to maintain this really high level of arousal and high
Yeah.
expectations, which potentially aren't going to be long term sustainable. And that doesn't mean that you don't fully commit to your role and set high standards for yourself, but you're also being kind and pragmatic.
It's the approach, it's the kind of energy. Although, of course, there's times when high energy is really, really beneficial, but it's more of, I guess, from what I'm hearing you say, slow and steady wins the race a little bit. Like, not necessarily slow, but the kind of, let's take a breath, like, okay, those things went wrong, breathe, let's learn and let's move on.
I would
Yeah.
tweak it. I would say slow and strategic wins the race.
Okay,
So
that's good.
so that idea of no, we don't need to do that now. We've got a meeting tomorrow, so I can raise that tomorrow. I don't need to send this email now. So just having that more strategic approach as opposed
Yes.
to what do I need to do today? Actually thinking, right, how can I be really efficient with what I'm doing?
Yes. Okay. Interesting. Um, and so what, going back a little bit to the frazzled parents who are working either full-time or part-time jobs
Mhm.
and finding it difficult to leave the work at work, when they're at home with all the madness that comes with having either a young family or teenagers.
Mm.
What are some extra little tips that you could give those listeners to how that they can arrive in the place where, like you said, they are where their feet are? They're kind of present.
I think there's a variety of tangible things which are much easier said than done. I'm really conscious that there is a pull which is worth exploring, which I think is really unhealthy. Is this? I'm just going to give myself permission to relax by just checking that there's no emails coming.
Relaxing by checking your emails.
or nothing's come in, so I can relax. Whereas obviously the real power and agency comes from, I've got time tomorrow to respond to anything that comes in, so I don't need to. So in terms of practical strategies, it would be things like not having, if possible, not having work emails on your phone, not having the actual app, even if it means in an emergency you go in through the internet, but you don't have the app or the alert. Getting into one of the people I work with, when they come home, they intentionally leave their phone in the car.
Nice.
For the first sort of 60 minutes, so that you don't have that different alerts coming on, so that they can come in and be present, and know that when they've done tea, when they've had a chance just to sort of settle from the day, that there is an opportunity at some point to then to go in and collect their phone, and more often than not, there's nothing there, but it's very easy for it to feel like a reminder of something that they need to check. One of the clients I've worked with online, they work in the States, and when I asked her, what would be a goal from coaching, she said, I want to have 0 emails in my inbox each night when I leave. Which is a really common thing to talk about, and I think everyone would know that's unrealistic. But also, you're looking at the wrong thing. And where she got to, as someone who had to manage teams internationally in different offices and different time zones, what was so positive for her, and she set up a process where she knew in her circadian rhythm where her energy was, that she would, and it fitted with the time zones, between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., so that 2-hour window, she would process her emails. And then she would turn her Outlook off, because she's a magazine editor, and she would need to do her own editing of the team she manages, from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 p.m. And so no emails could come in. She then knew, because she had invested in the team she managed, to say, when you email me or send me the work, if it's in the afternoon, you'll get a response by the next lunchtime. If it's an emergency, WhatsApp me and say, could you open this email? But several things happened. She was really excited when after she'd implemented for 6 weeks, to say, look, she walks home at 5 o'clock and doesn't have this sense of, I just need to clear these emails. She knows that she's got a set time where she will process them. But the other really interesting thing, which I wasn't expecting, is she now gets significantly less emails because she's not making herself available. And people are sort of doing a filtering. And the thing that she's reflected is, when she is available and can do a quick response, people are emailing her more often. When they know it's going to be within 20 hours, they perhaps find out for themselves, or go to another colleague, or think maybe it's not as necessary. But what that's really given them is control over something. And she's recognised it is a challenge, and there is a temptation to slip back into it. But she sees that the benefit of actually, and what's helped her is the mechanism of actually saying, no, I turn Outlook off. I don't have it on my phone. So
Yeah.
it's not, I can just quickly go and look at that. I would need to actually log it back in. But it also does fit when her approach to work, because she recognizes she has a little bit of a lull late morning, and so when she has a coffee, she can go through in that 2 hour window and be really in the mindset of, nope, we're going to do this, nope, we might have to have a 10-minute Teams call just to clarify this, but she can see how efficiently she's doing things, as opposed to interrupting all of her editing work to undo these small things, which really come back to that theme of being efficient and prioritizing her time.
Absolutely. It sounds like email batching, isn't it? Like you put it all in a time window. And then when you're working at something productive, you don't have any opportunity of emails coming in. I personally, when I'm in a situation where I can work again, because I'm currently on maternity leave, I like doing that. It's a game changer for if you have an hour and you want to get something done, you can just zone in on that task without the ping, 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 ping. Yeah, fantastic. Now, I realize the time has flown, but if there's one thing that listeners can take away from this chat, let's think about a listener with a family that's struggling with work-life balance, with parent guilt, both ways, not working enough, but also not spending enough time with the children. What is the one thing you'd want them to take away?
Yes. And I needed to get the correct quote because he's dreadfully misquoted, but Brian Dyson in the Georgia Tech commencement in 1991, I'm sure people have heard of this, but I think this is really powerful. As professionals, he talked about we juggle 5 balls, and they are family, health, spirit, friends, and work. The first 4, family, friends, spirit, and health, are made of glass. The 5th one, work, is rubber.
Yeah.
If you drop any of them, the rubber one will bounce back up.
Yeah.
If you drop any of the others that are glass, they won't be the same. So if you don't look after your health, if you don't look after your family, your friendships, and really importantly, your spirit, that has a much more significant impact.
Yes.
So that ability to actually maintain that perspective and just with work, rather than ploughing on when you're starting to feel stressed, whatever is needed to rectify that situation, taking that bold step to reach out to a colleague, as the manager said they wanted to do in the scenario I explained, had wanted his direct report to do, whether that is, if you need to be signed off because of whether you're under acute stress or stress and anxiety in work, so seeing the GP. Now that comes with lots of stigma and lots of things that people are concerned about. But my sort of key takeaway is that idea that we have to prioritize those 4 things over work. And no one in work wants you to deplete yourself. And also ask yourself the question, if I handed my notice in, how quickly would I be replaced?
That's a good one.
And no one can replace you at home.
Yeah.
In terms of your children, your family, your partner. So I think it's having that perspective, and there's a whole cocktail of things that could be working against that ability to be frazzled or thinking about work emails when you need to be at home and supporting your family. But putting things in place, and that notion that self-care isn't selfish.
Yes.
You are refueling yourself so that when things do go wrong with family, with work, you can deal with these effectively, and it not be something that takes a little bit of your resolve and energy away, and your sort of resilience to keep working and to keep going, which you need to actively refuel.
Yeah, filling your cup.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can't
pour from an empty one.
Exactly. Yes, you kind of have to pour from the overflow. So fill it so it's overflowing, and then you can do lots of amazing things. Absolutely. Now, I have a bit of a tradition. I love to ask all the guests what's one of your imperfections, just to keep it real, because we're all imperfect. We're all trying to do stuff amid the mess, hence the name. So if you're willing to share, what's one of your imperfections?
Oh, absolutely. Numerous imperfections. For me, it's that ability, or not the ability, the danger of zooming in too much. So when a exciting big contract comes in, putting all your energy into that as someone who's self-employed, and then not thinking, hang on, in 6 months' time, this contract will be completed. So you still need to be networking. You still need to be meeting new potential clients. So yes, that ability to remain strategic and to step back and think, right, what do I need to do in my workplace? But that was something as well, which when I was a senior leader in schools or running a PE department, you might think, right, okay, it's sports day, I'm going to really focus in on that, when you should also be ordering equipment and booking ground staff for September. So and I have to hold myself to account that I keep putting things in my calendar to support me to step back and just scan the horizon of what I need to do.
Smart. You kind of have a tendency to get into hyper-focus mode, and you get so excited about the project.
Yes.
I can completely relate as well, actually. It's everything it kind of takes over your week because it's all so exciting. Yes, the shiny new project.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if our listeners want to find out more about you and how to find you, well, first of all, you've already talked a bit about the coaching you do, but give a little overview of the type of services you provide and then how people can get in touch.
Yeah, thank you. So please visit my website. So it's simonpostletwaitecoaching.com. And there's my testimonials and the services that I offer. So I do one-to-one coaching, team coaching. I also do disc profiling, which is really interesting to promote self-awareness. And as a sole operator, what often a CEO or director might say, this is our issue, and I don't have any packages that are sort of a set menu. We can say, right, okay, so what would be helpful? What would success look like? And we can design a series of CPD sessions which can move into one-to-one coaching to support their organization.
Great.
And please find me on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, I'll put all your links to your website, your LinkedIn in the show notes so people can just click and find you. So, but thank you. That was fascinating.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
So there you have it. That was Simon Postletwaite, the coach for professionals who don't want to burn out. Well, this was interesting, and I hope there's a few things you might take away. Perhaps when you come home from work, you might leave your phone in the car or not look at the emails, or just think a bit more about trying to leave work at work, even if you work from home, and that just means the work stays in your office, for example. It's easier said than done. So no judgment to anybody, but give it a go. And perhaps that will help you feel more present with your children. And perhaps, in the long run, you might not burn out. Because burnout is just not a good place to be, is it? Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as always, I would really, really, really appreciate it if you could rate and review on whatever app you're watching this on. That just helps me so much. That makes the podcast seen, makes the algorithm spread this podcast to more people. So just tap that little 5 stars. It's very quick on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify to do. Thank you. That would be amazing. So without further ado, thank you so much. And I look forward to the next episode next week. Take care, everyone.